Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a new, fresh week, and we are ready to take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. Have a good time with that, and be all ready. Did I push the focus button? Are we all focused? It's the beginning of the week. I should check out. Nathan gives me the thumbs up. He says, "Yeah, I'm in focus." I wasn't sure. I got this little monitor over here, and I can't really tell very well because it's not all that great, and I'm not all that great. But anyway, very glad that you are here this morning. Got lots of good questions stacked up and ready coming in both last week and over the weekend. And I'm excited about some good things here. And let's see, I promised last week I would start with a question about Jonah. Chosen 377 has a question about Jonah, and so we're going to check that out. Let's see. Deb says YouTube isn't up yet. Is that you want to check on that, Nathan? He's checking. We won't do any of the major stuff until he verifies that we're good there. But you know, one of the things that you'll ought to check out is our trip to Israel. And it is January 31st is the flight depart date, going through February 11th. Go to dispensationalpublishing.com, click the blog button right there. It'll be right at the top, and you can check out the entire itinerary and the costs and the click here to register and all that kind of stuff. And I would love to take you to Israel with me and see and have such a good time there, no doubt about that, and looking forward to that. Okay, I see a few chats now on over on YouTube. Make sure we're all here. We've got Ontario and we've got Washington anyway that are on YouTube. The rest look to be on Worshify. The chatters anyway so far. I see some of you talking about rain. We got snow, you know, that in the grass you could kind of see. That's as far as it went. The grass was still poking out. We didn't get much snow, but nonetheless, we did get a little bit of moisture, getting it still today. So we'll send it on east to here, and let those of you in Oklahoma have it, and Texas have it, and whatnot. Coming your way. Arizona sent it on to me, and there we go. You know, Deb mentions Worshify stalls for me, so she has to watch on Worshify. That's a location issue that comes from our only using one server, and it's the highway between our server and your server, depending on where you are. And we're working on getting that problem resolved so that it'll so that there'll be two highways between us and you. And that's totally dependent upon where you are. And if you're in a place where it just doesn't get there very well, the problem is we got to send it from another direction and get it. And the big guys out there, big tech, they've got servers all over the place, so it just chooses the direction to come from. And that is something that changes there. You know, when we originally started Worshify, one of the ideas, we haven't ever pulled the trigger on this, but we might someday. One of the ideas is that we would have homes and churches that have good internet service like our church does, and use those as service hubs and, you know, make our own network kind of thing. So that'd be kind of fun. Okay, let's see. This week we've got a regular week of scheduling. We'll be doing 5 days of Ask the Theologian. We'll be doing Wednesday night Hosea. We'll be doing Thursday night Romans. I've had fun on both of those. So if you have missed and want to catch up, you got till Wednesday. We'll be in the third session of Hosea for Wednesday. It's starting to get to the point where it's hard to catch up, to watch it live anyway. But Thursday, we only had one session in Romans, so you can watch that between now and Thursday, be caught up for the live sessions if you'd like. Of course, you can always watch them archived. You don't have to watch them live with us. And it'll be a good week. 9 broadcasts this week, if we include yesterday's broadcasts, so 2 broadcasts yesterday. Okay, I tell you what, why don't we just jump into recording our television program here, and we've got a good question about the death of Jonah and maybe the life of Jonah. Let's check it out. And give me about 15 seconds. We'll get the television program started at the end of that 28 and a half minutes. Stay tuned because we will be continuing. But here we go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Randy White, and this is Ask the Theologian. You can submit your questions that we'll take 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at askthetheologian.com. And we want to take your questions and give them a solid biblical answer where we're going to question the assumptions. We're going to dig into it. We're going to try to figure out what really is the possibility. And someone with the handle Chosen377 comes up with a question from Matthew chapter 12, verses 39 and 40. That'll be our beginning question for today. And that question is, did Jonah die? I like this kind of question because that is a question the assumptions kind of question. Did Jonah die? You go down and ask all of your evangelical pastor friends about it, and they'll say, well, of course he died. Or, no, he didn't die, depending on what you're talking. Did he die in the whale, in the great fish, I should say? Did he die later on? Well, let's take a look at Matthew chapter 12, verses 39 through 40. Which says here, he answered, Jesus speaking, and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now, here, Jesus is using Jonah as a type. A type is a foreshadow. One of the things about a type, a biblical type, is that everything in a type has to correspond. In a parable or an illustration, it's just kind of the moral of the story that has to correspond. But in a type, all the pieces have to come across. Now, as you see here, in verse 40, as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The key right here comes right here, so shall. Let's see if I can highlight that for you. So shall. Now, that is an adverb. It describes how this is going to happen. How is the Son of Man going to be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth? In the same manner as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly. Now, here we have an interpretive question that is given. But first, let's take the standard interpretation of this. The standard interpretation is that Jesus Christ is going to be buried in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. And the standard interpretation is that he is going to be dead. Obviously, dies upon the cross and is buried and rises again. As a matter of fact, I think we would have tremendous theological problems if we were to say Jesus wasn't really dead when he was in the grave. Everything about the story of the crucifixion tells us he was dead, and all of our theology rests upon he was dead, body not breathing, brain not functioning, heart not beating, kind of dead. Now, if that is the case, then Jonah must have died in the belly of the whale, if you're going to take this literally. Because it doesn't say, as Jonah spent 3 days sitting, looking, praying. You know, all the little pictures we have, Jonah down there in the belly of the whale, he's praying. But that's not what Jesus was doing. And Jonah was doing this physically, not just spiritually. So if there is a true correspondence, then Jonah must have died and been risen again. Now, obviously, that brings up some questions and some things that we wonder about and we're curious about. You know, did Jonah actually go down, perhaps even drown, get swallowed by this whale, spend 3 days, 3 nights dead there, and get coughed up? Now, we know he did some praying, so he must not have drowned because a drowned man can't pray. And so he's there alive for a little bit of that. And at some point he prays, but does he die? And then he spends 3 days, 3 nights dead, and then he gets resurrected again. Is that the picture that is given? Now, that may sound new to you, but the truth is that many people actually do hold that idea. In fact, even the Jewish people often would hold to that idea. In that, you know, I preached a sermon series a number of years ago, a couple of years ago now, called 30 Amazing Bible Stories You May Not Know. And in that, number 13 of that particular series, and you can find that series at randywhiteministries.org, number 13 of that particular series was on Jonah. As a matter of fact, I bring the notes up, which are available to you as well, and the notes speak of Jonah. But notice, if I can enlarge this, we'll just come right down here. Was Jonah alive, and other things you may not know? I said the most common understanding of Jonah in the fish was that he was alive the entire time. However, this is not the only understanding, and perhaps not even the best. Matthew 12:40 tells us that Jonah was a foreshadow or a type of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Note especially, as Jonah was, so shall the Son of Man be. Could Jonah have been dead and then resurrected? Can an alive man be the type of a dead man? Therein lies the question. I think you could make a reasonable assumption when you come to Matthew chapter 12, verse 40 especially, so shall the Son of Man be. I think you could make a reasonable assumption that Jonah actually was dead and raised back to life. There's actually some more interesting things in that particular sermon, number 13 of 30 Amazing Bible Stories You May Not Know, that you can look up and get into that on whether or not there was actually another resurrection of Jonah as well. It comes from Jewish tradition. You can look at that and see if you want. Now, all of that rests upon a particular interpretation, and shall we call it the standard interpretation. We come back to Matthew chapter 12, verse 30, and here it says, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now, this is always taken to be in the grave, in the burial place he is going to be. That is how we interpret, again, the heart of the earth. Those are the key words. But the question becomes, is the heart of the earth the grave? And therein does lie an interpretive problem if you let Scripture interpret Scripture and you ask some questions about the heart of the earth. Can you find anything that supports the idea that the heart of the earth is the grave? There is a possibility that this is actually speaking about Jerusalem, and that for 3 days and 3 nights, Jesus, the Son of Man, is going to be in Jerusalem. And then you could tie that to, Jonah is in Jericho for 3 days and 3 nights. And you could put this to the ministry just prior to the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So there is another way to take this. Now, here's what I find when you're presented with a new idea like this. To say, well, you know, I've always heard that that was in the grave, three days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. That means he was buried. Now, there are Even with technology, you've heard, there are the early adopters, then there are those who come along a little bit laggard, and then there are the never adopters. In theology, it's the same way. Sometimes there are certain people, theologically, you tell them, hey, 3 days, 3 nights in the heart of the earth could be speaking about Jesus's ministry in Jerusalem just prior to his death. And they say, oh, now that solves some problems. It solves some problems, for example, with the chronology of the death of Jesus Christ. What day did Jesus die? Okay, so that's not talking about his burial. It's talking about actually his ministry in which he was alive. There are some early adopters. Then there's a group of people, and this is not a bad place to be. There's a group of people that say, I'm going to think about this a little bit. I'm going to peruse this a little bit. I'm going to ruminate on this a little bit. I'm going to study this a little bit. Let me weigh the facts and see what I can come up with. And then there are those who will say, never, ain't gonna happen. Now, I don't want you on any theological idea that's presented as new to be one of those that says, no, I'm not even gonna study this. I have always heard it this way, and that must be the way it is. I think that's what gets us into, buying into theological dilemma, when we don't need to, when there is another way. So we come here and we question the assumptions. And in doing that, we say, did Jonah die when he was in the whale? The answer is, I don't know. The answer is you can make a good argument either way. The answer, I think, depends upon what you do with Matthew chapter 12, verse 40, and the heart of the earth. Because in the book of Jonah, for example, and in the other places, there's not much more than a hint that you can, there's certainly nothing solid to build your case. So you've got to build the case from Matthew chapter 12, verses 39 through 40 to see what to do. And there are two ways of taking chapter 12, verses 39 through 40, which are going to affect that. There are good and solid theologians on both sides of this issue. This is probably going to be one of those things that you're going to have to look at all the evidence and say which convinces me, and then go with that and begin to strengthen your idea and your argument on that. I appreciate that good question there. Thank you. Chosen 377. And then we've got a question that comes from Gerard in the Netherlands, and for this we will need a copy of the New King James, because it is a question on the King James Bible and the New King James Bible, and so I'll bring up some software that's got that on there. So Gerard is going to say, hey, wait a minute, not so fast. He says, lately you stated that the New King James Version is based upon the Textus Receptus. Now that is, if you're not familiar with the term, that is the term that we use for the underlying Greek text of the King James Version, the Textus Receptus. I said the New King James also based upon that. He says, but if you compare Romans 3:22, Galatians 2:16 and 3:22, but in the King James and the New King James, you have the faith of Jesus Christ versus the faith in Jesus Christ. And he says it's the same wording as other Alexandrian texts, such as the New International Version, the Christian Standard Bible, the New International Version, the New American Standard. All the modern versions are based upon the Alexandrian line versus the Byzantine line, which is the Textus Receptus. Now, I am strongly a Byzantine text guy. That's just Textus Receptus. I think there are huge problems, maybe even more than the average person has considered, with that Alexandrian line, which is the critical text, which now has been revised so many times that anybody with a little bit of thought to him ought to say, if this thing has to be revised every few years, maybe that's not what I want to base my life and eternity on. I'd rather go with something that is not going through all these revisions. So, is the New King James based upon the good text or the bad text? Let's take one of these and let's go to Romans chapter 3, verse 22. And here in the King James, which I have on the right side of your screen, it says, even the righteousness of God, which is this little phrase right here is what we want to look at, by faith of Jesus Christ. Now we come to the New King James Version, which I'm going to bring up right here. And it says, through faith in Jesus Christ. Okay, of Jesus Christ, in Jesus Christ. Now, here's what I want us to do is see, is that a textual issue or is that an interpretive issue? To do that, bring your eyes to the center of the screen. And we see right here the words. I tell you what, I'm going to see if I can turn my color coding off. Perhaps I will be able to, perhaps I will not. No, okay, I'm just going to leave it right there. So ignore the color coding. Look right here in this section, through faith, right here. Dia pisteos, and then it has Iesu Christou. Dia pisteos is what we need to know. Through faith, actually, let's go ahead of. Notice that the word of is not there, but it is inherent in the form of the Greek. That is a genitive form. Now, that is the Textus Receptus. Now let's switch over here. I'll bring this up a little larger. Again, we've got some color coding issues here that you'll have to ignore. And I tell you what, I'm going to bring these side by side so that we can look. The one on the left is the one I do not like. The one on the right is the one I do like. And we are looking at the words right here, dia. Dia pisteos Iesu Christou. Over here, the one we like, dia pisteos Iesu Christou. The truth is, both texts are exactly the same. This means that it does not deny my claim that the New King James Version is based upon the Textus Receptus. It is based upon the Textus Receptus. The reason you have of Jesus Christ or in Jesus Christ is an interpretive, a translation matter, not an underlying textual matter, but a translation matter. Now, I think that the New King James Version is way too loose in their translation matters. They very often will change tenses from what you've got in the underlying text that they're working with. They'll make little changes, and they'll do that which seems they're so influenced by the modern versions that influence comes in, and all the modern versions do say in Jesus Christ. Now, the truth is, the genitive version here is what it is. We do not have a word in either text, in any text. There is absolutely no text that says of Jesus Christ or in Jesus Christ. It is always a translation matter. However, the standard genitive would be of. This belongs to is the standard genitive. The challenge with the genitive is it does have a lot of different ways that you can use. I don't like to build a theological argument on anything that is based upon the genitive, because the genitive really does give us it gives us fits, so to speak, as grammarians, because there is the possibility of taking it this way, there is the possibility of taking that way. I think the King James did the right thing in saying, let's take this as the standard. And we don't have the genitive in the English language, but if you were talking about, if we did in the English, we might be saying, hey, let's go on a little trip. I'll take my car, you'll take your car. And then someone would say, oh, it's the car of Randy, it's the car of Gerard. And the standard would be genitive. We would use the genitive tense in that, and the standard would be of it belongs to. So, Romans chapter 3, verse 22, the faith that belongs to Jesus Christ. But I suspect we could find that there is the possibility of taking that even as an in, the faith in Jesus Christ. And if we just took Jesus Christ in the genitive, in fact, let's just take Jesus right here, in the genitive, and we're going to take it exactly in this matter here, of Jesus. Here I've brought up on the left side of your screen, there's 233 times that we've got. That makes it rather difficult. And then let's just pop this out here a little bit and then enlarge it a little bit. Unfortunately, we're doing a search in Greek, which we would have to do. But as we take this Greek, now let's pull up the King James. Here's a good first use. Matthew 1:1, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ. There's the standard of Jesus. And let's see, when the birth of Jesus. Now you see that is even used a little different way. Let's take the easy ones here. Of Jesus. You've come down, and here is lay them down at Jesus's feet. Well, okay, it's worded a little different, but that's, of Jesus. And going through, what we would have to do is go through these 233 times and see, did the King James translators ever take this and make it in Jesus? I wouldn't be surprised if they did. You've got to take some context here. But the thing I think the King James did right here is say, the default is going to be of Jesus. So if we got one we're not sure about, let's go with of. The New King James really, I think, said the default is let's go with the wording of all the new versions. And I think the new versions are corrupt in that they are based upon the wrong text, but a corrupt text. But in this particular case, you do have to look at it and say that does not deny the fact that the New King James is a translation of the Textus Receptus. And so I appreciate the passion and the idea on there. I just think that in that particular case, it is not exactly right. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So here's an interesting question. Do you have any idea what percentage of Christians believe like you teach? This comes from Chuck in Oklahoma. And when you begin to look at that, I teach in a way that I call right division. It comes from, let me turn my mug around right there. It comes from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, which says, rightly dividing the word of truth. I believe that dividing the word of truth has to require that you recognize that Paul received a new dispensation. Now, if you look at Christianity, let's take the broadest sense of Christianity. There's that which comes under the Catholic umbrella. Into that umbrella, let's put the Roman Catholics, let's put the Orthodox churches of all varieties, and let's go ahead and put the Anglican churches in there, Anglican and Episcopalianism, that all of which stayed away from the Protestant Reformation as we know it. So all of Catholicism does not at all accept the idea that something started under Paul, and that is where we get our doctrine for salvation and Christian living. They reject that idea. Then you would come into those who protested against all of that. And the Protestants, and again, we use a broad brush here, but all of the Protestant denominations, the mainline denominations especially, and they would have various views on different things, but you've got the Calvinist or the Reformed, the Presbyterian, you've got the Lutherans, of course, you've got the Methodists that come from that stream. All the mainline denominations are going to come from there. And all of those would reject also the idea that something came from Paul, which means our faith and expression ought to be totally Pauline. They reject it. Now, if you take the Catholic umbrella and the Protestant umbrella, there you probably have, let's call it 80% of Christianity. Now, of the other 20%, there are those who came more out of the radical Reformation. They either radically reformed from Anglicanism, which is often the case in the United States, the Congregationalists and whatnot. So they radically reformed from there, or they radically reformed from Protestantism, or they were never a part of any of those streams, which there were those. There was just a small stream that came along. So there's this other umbrella of 20%. Now that umbrella would include today, we would talk about the evangelicals and we would talk about the fundamentalists for all practical purposes. And of the evangelicals and the fundamentalists, of that 20% that we're left with, I would suspect that of that, probably 90 to 95, 98% perhaps. I'll go with a 98%. 98% of this 20% that is left would reject the idea that Paul gave something that had never, ever been seen or hinted about at all, and therefore we are under a completely different pattern than Israel, than those under the Gospels, than Peter, James, and John in the first part of the book of Acts prior to the introduction of Paul as the apostle. That none of that is there. So we've got maybe 2% of the 20%, and that is then a fraction of the entire the entirety of it all. I think in the end we've got what percentage of Christians believe like I teach? A tiny fraction of a percentage. It would be what it is. This is why you can go literally throughout an entire state in many places and not really find the kind of teaching that I am giving, which is really just reading the Bible literally. I know that all the others say they read the Bible literally, but I would challenge absolutely every one of them. If they do not recognize the Pauline dispensation, I would challenge every one of them in a face-to-face debate that I would show that they are not reading the Bible literally. I'm reading the Bible literally. That's all I'm doing. And sadly, it is a fraction of a percentage that does come and read the Bible literally, just a tiny little percent. But maybe even you're new to the program and to thinking like this, and you're coming along and saying, "Okay, now what's up with? There's something different about that. This is a little strange." Stick with it, because you'll find that reading the Bible literally will set you free. You will all of a sudden be freed from confusion and from manipulation and from the danger of reading the Bible incorrectly. That's what my book, Evangelical Garbage, is about. It's about confusion, manipulation, and danger that comes from not recognizing there is a Pauline dispensation. Learn about it. It will be a fascinating journey, and I think that you'll find that, again, it brings completely new life to the Bible. Now, I'll warn you, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And it becomes a challenge then in dealing with 98% of Christianity that's there. I'm out of time, but I'm Dr. Randy White, and this is Ask the Theologian. You can find our full teaching ministry at randywhiteministries.org. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for that good question. I got lots of questions here. Let's just jump right in here to a question that comes from our friend Jay in Tennessee. He says, say a magic genie gave you the ability to record a message and have it played in every single church in America. What would you say in the message? That goes right along with what we've got right there, doesn't it? What a gift that would be to magic genies or not. What a gift that would be to say, okay, you've got an opportunity to get this message out. I think that I would, this might be one of those in which which I might change my mind. If it ever happened, if the grand poobahs of ecumenicism called me up today and said, hey, we want to invite you to the ecumenical conference. Come and preach, and then we will preach the message or broadcast the message out to all the churches. Whatever the message was, I would definitely want to emphasize the truth of Paul's message in Ephesians chapter 3. I probably would preach from Ephesians chapter 3. If you have heard of the dispensation of the grace of God which is given to me, given me to youward. I would hammer that right there. I might not be really all that nice. I probably would take the approach, and again, we talked about this last week when we were talking about a Jehovah's Witness question. Whether or not this is the right thing to do or not is debatable. But I would take the approach that I've got one shot, I want them to remember it. And so I think I would say, Paul has a dispensation of the grace of God given to him. Friends, if there is anything that every church in America needs to know, it is that there is what I will call a Pauline dispensation. And furthermore, we as the church better figure out what that is. And shame on us in the pew. I mean, a pox on the preachers, but shame on us in the pew for not reading our Bible and insisting, preacher, you better have something to say about Ephesians chapter 3, verse 2. You've just got to. And this would be fun. We won't take the time to do it, but it would be fun to look at the commentaries, the evangelical commentaries, the Protestant commentaries, the Catholic commentaries on Ephesians chapter 3, verse 2. And see what they say about the dispensation of the grace of God. My guess is they're all going to say something about like, it's always been grace. Oh, God's always been so gracious. It's always been by faith, by grace through faith, not of works. Always, 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 always. Paul just worded it a little differently. In which case, if I could find the commentary that says that, and I think I wouldn't have to look far to do it, if I could find the commentary that says that, I would say, you guys either don't know how to read, or you're dumb as a box of rocks, or you are flat out lying. Which one is it? Can you read? Are you dumb as a box of rocks? Or are you just a liar? Now, maybe just to be nice, I'll say, okay, you're lying, but it's because you were duped. So maybe you are dumb as a box of rocks because you were duped. Now, I suspect by this time that magic genie is tugging on my arm, trying to say, "Oh, you better get yourself out of here. I only gave you one wish, and that doesn't include save me from this," because the church would rise up. And the reason that the church would rise up in warfare against me is because it would go bankrupt with that message. The implications of the message of a Pauline dispensation would cause the church to go bankrupt. And by church there, I especially mean denominationally. There is not a single denomination that would survive a Pauline revelation. Not one. They would go under. And those denominations exist to continue themselves. They're not doing a very good job, but they exist to continue themselves. And I think the people in the pew, are kind of waking up and saying, the United Methodist Church as a denomination, what a total waste. They ain't got anything to offer this world. The Southern Baptist Convention, gosh, you got to be kidding. Send money to that thing? That little woke organization that is literally dying on the vine? I of course, have Southern Baptist roots, and I remember when there was the Home Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, and they actually sent missionaries throughout the United States, places where it was going to be difficult, if not impossible, for any kind of a gospel witness to ever be established under the normal system, and they would send a career missionary to live their life there. They was in northern New Mexico. I knew them. They don't send a single missionary today to the United States. Not one. There's not a part-timer that's sent out. Zero. What in the world would I want to support it for? Just a bunch of woke ideology and people having a job to continue to exist themselves. They pay for people to come and give me advice on how to revitalize my church. Hey, let's have a dead denomination come give you advice on how to revitalize. It just becomes absolutely ridiculous there. And Nathan, there's one that Gerald can't take care of. I think we got some chats on YouTube need removed. But anyway, it's bots that come in and put stuff. Oh, okay. He says you're not seeing him, just I'm seeing him. Okay, never mind. Cliff. Yeah, getting all my names. Cliff is helping us, and I really appreciate it. Cliff's helping us keep those cleaned up. So they're cleaned up. Y'all didn't see them. Sorry that you don't know the best adult dating site now, but nonetheless. So back to the answer here. It would definitely be something that highlights American church. You've got to figure out what this Pauline dispensation is. What is the dispensation of the grace of God which is given to me? How is it different than that which was given to Peter? If it was given to Paul, and he insists it was given to him by revelation in the very next verse, how that by revelation he made known unto me the mystery. And you go, in other ages was not made known. Okay, make this separation. Show me something that's different from Paul. Let's say Paul to Peter, Paul to Jesus, Paul to Isaiah, Paul to Moses. Show me the difference. If the church can figure that out, then there would be some hope for it. So I would preach that message. I think I would preach it again. I am by and large a very nice guy, but I would be kind of blunt with it. I think soft hand-holding isn't going to do much in this regard because there's such a hard head that you would have to deal with. Excellent question, Jay. Thanks for that. And this is all in the same neighborhood as well. Valerie in Louisville has a question. By the way, Valerie, been praying for you. She lost her mother recently and been dealing with that grief, and so our prayer's been going out for you. Welcome back here. She says, I really want to help others rightly divide God's Word. If I were to host a home Bible study, which of your verse-by-verse series would you begin with? Thank you. And then a little parentheses, maybe an older one where you were gentler in your opposition to Calvinism. See, this is the problem with my approach, as I was speaking of here just a moment ago, is sometimes they can't quite get over, the guy's just rude. because they don't know me enough to know, how utterly nice I actually am. And so they get offended right up front. I don't know if this is the way you say it today, but when I was in elementary school and you wanted to offend someone, you looked at them and you said, "Your mama wears combat boots." That was supposed to be offensive. Well, when I come and I throw out my opposition to Calvinism, and various other things, and speak bluntly, that does sometimes, if you're trying to help somebody through, it isn't always the best. I will admit that it isn't always the best. So what do you do? And the challenge on my end, by the way, one, it's personality, and I don't think that. I think we ought to know our personality and watch our personality and be careful with our personality. But at the same time, I don't think we ought to work all that hard to change our personality, just make people happy. And then the other flip side of that is I'm not trying to do the same thing Valerie is trying to do. Valerie is trying to take people who probably are Calvinists, because if you're in Kentucky, there's a machine there that's spitting out Calvinist propagandists all over the place. So, there's lots of them. So she's trying to say, hey, how can I gently guide them along? What is it that I can do? Here's what I think I would recommend on what study could I take them through. If you go to randywhiteministries.org.com, whichever you want, and then right over here on the left, you click the Start Here. Then I think I would do one of these things here. The essential gospel might, even though these are people who are saved, these are people who go to church, but it might not hurt to say, I just kind of like the way this guy shares the gospel, and it is sort of at the heart of who we are, so let's have a first session in that. And, begin to look at that, and that's a possibility. But if not the essential gospel, the Bible in one sermon would be a good place, especially the notes that go along with that. And you could even, if you wanted to, just take the notes and say, we're going to spend a little time, running through the Bible in one sermon, talking through these, I don't know, I think there's 40 points or something like that in the notes. Looking at that. That's a possibility. But both of those are just kind of one hits. You could expand them a little bit, but it's a one session thing. Now, you could decide between understanding and dispensations, but understanding dispensations. In your particular group setting, that's probably not where I would go. I probably would go to 30 things you need to know about the Bible. And in that particular series, let me stop this right here. You've got these 30 things right here, beginning with, well, unless it's mixed in there, it looks like it's beginning with number 3. Nathan's working on my new website, aren't you? Yeah. You may have to look at YouTube or something. We have all 30 of them, and they may just be mixed out of order here. But you get the promise, the flood. It goes through some basic things, but comes with some decent notes that are given right here that are downloadable, and that would lead them in probably mostly fairly gently, especially the first 10 or 15 of those. Definitely, it's not going to get into Calvinism. And by the time it did, if it did, by the time it did, I don't even remember much Calvinism in that one. But if it did get there, at least by then, they would know that I'm a charming fellow and would work through that. I think home Bible studies, by the way, are a really great way to go. And that we have a number of our friends out there who have group studies. In fact, there are a couple of groups that meet on Sunday mornings, and they just use our sermon. Usually they're running a week behind. They use the week behind, and it has become church for them. You know, they still have the gathering, and they do their own music and all that kind of stuff, and you know, all the various activities that they want to carry on. And then we have a number of groups that meet on Thursday nights or other times in the week, and kind of work through some of these together. So I think it's really a great way to do that and carry that out. I like. Let's see. What is it? Deb says Deb says maybe it's because I have a blunt personality. I don't make many friends or influence people. The older I get, the more I like people with a blunt personality, and the more I learned how to deal with people with a blunt personality. When I was a child, I spake as a child. But now that I'm a man, the older I get, when someone is blunt, I have learned, be blunt right back. They speak remember the stupid thing out there in the book, you know, love languages. What's your love language? Some of us, love language is bluntness. And blunt people get blunt. We understand blunt. That was one of Donald Trump's. I started to say problem. I didn't see it as a problem. I saw it as a benefit. Is that he was blunt. You know, he'd look right out there at the CNN cameras and say, "You guys are liars. You're fake news." That's kind of blunt. And other politicians were like, "Oh, you know, I can't offend CNN. I gotta keep them on my side." What was the old saying? I think it came from whoever was the boss of the New York Times at the time. Says, you know, never pick an argument with people who buy ink by the barrel. And Donald Trump said, "I don't care." You know, I don't know. A lot of times it comes from being old. Sometimes, like Donald Trump, it comes from being rich and powerful. You can buy your own network if you want. Good word there. Okay, let's go down to Polka, West Virginia, and a question that comes from Richmond, who says, "Does the law of first use," we were just talking about this yesterday in session 9, I believe it is, of the hermeneutics Bible study. Hermeneutics study, I guess you should call it. Does the law of first use apply to the first time a word is used chronologically, or when it is used historically or originally? He says, not sure if I asked that correctly. For example, he says, if James used a word in James and Paul used the same word in Romans, which one is first? I will go with... I'll actually go with the simplest method you can do here and say first in the book, first in order in the Bible, even as we have it. You might find an example in which there's an exception here, but I think it's going to be a rare thing. So I would take first in the 66 books. That is first, what would you call that? First textually, let's say that, first textually. The first one that you find in the text. And then, therefore, I would say, I wouldn't worry so much about, hey, I've got this word in Romans, but I've also got it in James, and James predates Romans, and so I'll take James as the first use. I probably wouldn't do that. I would rather say I'm going to take the Bible as it's given. Now, this comes with a little bit of suggestion, and I don't know how strongly I would feel about this, but a little bit of suggestion that we have the books of the Bible in the order that God wants us to have the books of the Bible, and therefore especially with the New Testament, let's take it textually rather than chronologically, because chronologically, again, we would mix those things up. But the truth is, there's a possibility that James is the very first thing written in the New Testament. And so you would use James fundamentally, prior to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all the way through. I don't know that would, and it would be a fun study to do sometime, see, does that mess you up anywhere? Does it change anything? But I think you can just take it textually just to make it simple. I do think that the rule of thumb would be to take it in its use as the underlying language. So that is to say, if we find a word in the New Testament, let's take the first use in the New Testament. But I don't think that has to be exclusively true, because we read the Bible in English, and it's the English word we're trying to figure out. And so you could take and go all the way back to the first use textually, even into the Old Testament. Again, there's some cases in which that might get you in trouble, but I suspect that it's so rare that it would get you in trouble that you could use it, and by the time you got used to the issues of first use, you could get to it. First use, the law of first use is not the easiest thing, because as I think I mentioned yesterday, typically, you go back here and you find the first use of, I don't know, I just open up to Isaiah 61, there's bridegroom. First use of bridegroom, let's pretend like that's the first use. And say, well, what is a bridegroom? Is it actually defined there as a bridegroom decketh himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with jewels? I could kind of figure out, but it's not actually a definition there. It's more of a description. Well, from that description, I can get the sentiment of it, and I can begin to figure out from the sense and the sentiment, and putting all those things together, to figure that out. Now, can I take bridegroom in Isaiah, pretending like that's the first one, and then can I come back over here, I don't know, to say John the Baptist and Jesus, as the bridegroom is here and when the bridegroom leaves, and can I use that in the same way? I think the vast majority of the time you're going to be able to do so and carry that out. And getting the sense of how it was originally used in the English Bible. The first sense in the English Bible is often going to be in the Old Testament. Getting the sense of how that's used, carrying that sense over, not the context, because it might not be contextually related at all, but carrying that sense over into the New Testament, I think would bring it. It's kind of like, lighting. You change the color of the lights or something, and it brings just a little bit different feel to it. A little. You've all been in a restaurant. Maybe you're like me, and you go eat at 5 o'clock because you want the early bird discount, and then you're still there at 6 o'clock when the lights get dim, and you say, "Oh, it must be the dinner hour now. Now we can charge more because the lights are dim." It's that sense that you want to pick up of the word. And whatever definition you can as well in carrying that out. I think it becomes a useful thing. The more you use it, the more useful it is. At first, it's perhaps not the easiest thing. But I would just go in textual order. How's that? Appreciate that. Let's see. I'm out of time here, but let's go with Sarah's question. Sarah in Illinois tomorrow about Genesis 3:16 and Genesis 4:7 and any similarity there. And then Edith's got a Genesis question also, Genesis 14. Neil's got a question. Let's see, I haven't read it yet here. About the body of Christ will reside in heaven, and the Jews will occupy earth in the ages to come dispensation. Does the Bible give us any clue as to where Jews that were saved in the dispensation of grace will reside? And some more comments on that. We'll get to that. Valerie's got a Hebrews 11 and James 2 question on faith. Deb in the Ozarks, Galatians 4 question. Manny in San Antonio, the old Padre of San Antone, got a question on Ephesians. Well, several questions, several passages on are these verses good to show right dividing. That'll be good. Oh, let's just go ahead and take Betty Jo's question right now. It's a Biblify question, and perhaps Nathan can tell us, but he's going to have to think fast. Betty Jo says, I love using Biblify, but would like to know what the Web, WBT, and BBE on the drop-down menu stand for. I guess I should know, but I don't. Thanks, Nathan, for creating it, and congratulations on the new baby boy. That's right, baby boy to be born in March, but we just found out it was a baby boy. Now, what she's referring to is in fact, I'm just going to bring up 3 windows here and ignore the fact that those are small print. You can't see them. But in the upper corner of each window, there is, for example, KJV, and then there's this drop down. This is the translation. So you've got, say, for example, the Young's Literal Translation. In fact, I'm going to link all 3 of these by clicking that little chain right there. And I'm going to go ahead and bring these up where you can see them a little bit. And let's go to John 3:16, just as a familiar one. And now we've got it. Now, on the left, I've got the Young's Literal Translation. The other 2 right now are the King James. Let's change this. We've got the DBY. That is the Darby translation. So now we've got Young's, Darby, King James. They can all work in harmony with one another. For example, they're all in 3:17. Let's again take to John 3:16. But the question is then, you've got Web, WBT, and BBE. The Web version, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Now, is that Webster?
Yeah, I think that one's Webster.
Okay, so stop right there and you figure out the rest of them as I'm going. Here's the reason those are there. Because they're all in the public domain. That's why they're there. The bottom 3, and we should color code these or something, because King James and Young's are built on the Textus Receptus. Darby, I think Darby went on the critical text as it was back then. I'm not totally sure on that. Webster, I don't know. We should see which text he went on. We should put a color code, you know, a green light and a red light. Don't go there. But we can't put like the New American Standard without getting licensing agreements and paying and all that kind of stuff. But you might want to compare and say, okay, is there an underlying textual difference? If you knew which one Daniel Webster used, it's a public domain Bible, you could do that. But you know, one of the helpful things, even in definition, we know that we kind of trust Daniel Webster as it comes to a dictionary. So let's see on a difficult passage what word he used to translate that, and see if that is helpful. So Web is the Webster edition.
Actually, I take it back.
Oh.
Web is World English Bible.
Oh, we take that back. Web doesn't have anything to do with Webster. Does WBT?
The WBT is Webster.
Okay, I knew there was a Webster somewhere. Sorry about that. WBT right here. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. The WBT is the Webster Bible translation. Now, Web, which we were looking at, is the, say that again? The World English Bible. I don't know anything about the World English Bible. We should check out the World English Bible. My guess is it's just a bad translation based upon the Alexandrian texts. But again, if you want to catch a textual issue, you can't pull up the New American Standard, so look there. I may be wrong on that, so we should check. Again, these are public domain Bibles that we could fairly easily get and put in. So the World English Bible. And then finally, we've got the BBE, which is
The Bible in Basic English.
the Bible in Basic English. This is going to be, I tell you what, let's go to Mark 16, and see if we can find out something about, I don't know, Mark 16. Where is it that you have the change, a textual issue? Is it beginning with verse 9? Yes, beginning in verse 9. Now, when he came back from the dead early on the first day. Okay, they're not giving any notes here about the closing. They've got the closing of Mark 16. So I'm not sure which text. I still guess it's based upon the bad text, but the BBE, Basic Bible in English, is going to try to give easy words. Now, what I would say again on those, let me pull this screen back up and we'll look at the right here. I would use the King James, use the Young's to help you in Greek to get the word order. And then these other four, and I would start with Darby. The other four I would use if I say, I am having a hard time figuring out this English. And see if they help out the English in any way. If you find when you're doing that, wait, the WEB says something very different from the KJV. That's when you know this is one I got to roll up my sleeves and do a little work and figure out what's up with that. But again, those are the top three are the only three that I ever use. The bottom three are there because they're public domain. They're there for reference purposes only, I would say. Just to help. Sometimes it does help. If somebody say the same thing in a different way, that can be helpful to, I get what the King James is saying now. Yeah, it's exactly what it says, but I had a brain fog and I needed somebody to say it differently. Sometimes that can be helpful, and I would use them in that sense. Or it can tell you there is an underlying issue here that we got to figure out. Whether it is a translation issue or a textual issue, there's something here that we got to figure out. If you find this broad divergence in some of these, then you get all of that. Okay. Thanks, Betty Jo in Arizona, for that question. And I appreciate all of that. And Alex in London, I see you all have I didn't get to your question, but I see you got a new prime minister today, the youngest prime minister in 200 years. I don't know much about him. Conservative. The thing I read about him is he's conservative. He's of the Conservative Party. I don't know if that means conservative, because Liz Cheney was of the Conservative Party. But he's of the Conservative Party. He managed finances well during the pandemic. But I kind of wonder the way Great Britain and the United States managed finances during the pandemic created the finances we have now. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Liz Truss, I've been reading, I was asked a question about Liz Truss last week and I didn't know much. Liz Truss seemed to be more libertarian, get the government out of things, let people, have their tax money and deal with that. And that caused such a uproar in, I don't know, shall you say, big government socialist England that didn't work. I read somebody put on the RWM Connect site, somebody had an article up there from the Federalist about conservatives needing to look at things from a different paradigm. I'm not sure I agreed with a lot of it, but I'm not sure I agreed with some of it. He kind of said, hey, conservatives, we're going to have to use big government. And Liz Truss kind of seemed to say, no, we're not gonna. We're gonna make a drastic change. But it shocked the system so much that she didn't survive. She might have had some decent ideas. I don't know. So is this new guy? I don't remember his name. Is the new guy a kinder, gentler approach? Well, we've been through that in the United States. Back in the 80s, 90s. And I don't know if that worked. But anyway, best of luck to Great Britain and their new prime minister. And tomorrow we'll get... I like your question, Alex. We'll get to that tomorrow. Someone said that even in the dispensation of grace, we cannot say something against the pastors. Quoted Numbers 12:8. Shall we speak against the pastors? We'll get to that tomorrow. Okay, out of time. Hate to eat and run, or run and eat, but got to go today. I'll be with you all week for all of our broadcasts. Look forward to seeing you for Hosea, for Romans, for Ask the Theologian, for all the good things. Thanks for being with us. Randy at randywhiteministries.org. Contact me about going to Israel. Would love to see you. I can even get you there from England. We'll see you all soon.